When the world goes quiet, some voices still remain. Not every soul finds peace when the clock strikes 12. There are stories hidden in the shadows, whispers drifting between the living and the forgotten. Some stories linger, some souls don't leave. Welcome to Stillness After Midnight, where every silence tells a story. If you're drawn to the mysteries that stir after dark, the voices that echo when the world sleeps, subscribe now and join us as we listen to the souls who still have something to say. Because in the stillness, the truth finally speaks. I didn't light the fire, I didn't lock the door, I didn't pour the gasoline, but I stood there, I heard them scream, I saw the children pounding on the windows, and I walked away. Some crimes leave no fingerprints. Some verdicts are never spoken aloud. And some souls, like mine, are sentenced forever for doing absolutely nothing. My name is Daniel. No one knows who I am. No police reports mention me. No news broadcast ever said my name. But every night, the children who died in that house on Ember Street come to find me. 3 kids, a mother screaming, a father collapsed on the sidewalk, begging me like a man drowning in a sea of flames. Please, save the children. I remember his voice, his eyes, the way his knees trembled. I didn't panic. I didn't run. I just kept walking. That night, I slept fine. The next morning, I made eggs and coffee. I saw the headline, 3 children perish in mysterious fire. No survivors. I changed the channel and kept living until the signs began. It started with the mirror in my bathroom fogging up at night, even when I didn't run the hot water. Then came the sounds, laughter, crying, tiny footsteps above me. I live alone. No pets, no attic. One night at exactly 3:12 a.m., the smoke alarm went off by itself. There was no smoke, no fire. But when I turned toward the hallway mirror, I saw myself burning. People didn't believe me. Doctors called it sleep paralysis. My friends stopped texting back. I started forgetting normal things. What day it was, my mother's voice. But I remembered the names of the children. Eli, 7 years old, loved trains. Morgan, 5, wore a superhero cape every day. June just started kindergarten. I had never met them, but I see them every night, their scorched hands tapping on my window. Their mouths blackened by smoke, still whispering, "You won't leave again, right?" Now I'm ready to tell you everything. About how a man like me, someone who did nothing, became cursed not by fire, but by silence. I didn't expect that night to mean anything. It was just another walk. The kind of late-night detour you take when the silence in your apartment grows too loud and the ceiling feels like it's pressing down on your chest. I wasn't in a hurry. I wasn't lost. I was just walking. The neighborhood was older, the kind with cracked sidewalks and street lamps that buzz like insects trying not to die. Ember Street, yes, that was its name, barely had any light, but I remember it because of the glow. It started soft, an orange haze bleeding through the ball, flickering against the trees like the pace of something alive. I thought it was someone grilling late or a trash bin set on fire by teenagers. But then I heard it, screaming, high-pitched, raw, and so human it scraped across the bones inside me. Not one voice, several. I turned the corner and saw it, a house swallowed in flames. Fire pouring out of the second floor, black smoke curling into the sky like angry fists. And then, the window shattered. A child's arm reached through the broken glass, flailing. Behind it, more shadows. Tiny figures moving inside a room lit red like the inside of a furnace. They were screaming words now, words I could understand. "Help! Please, somebody!" Then a different voice. A man. He came out of the front yard, stumbling, bleeding, barely on his feet. I'll never forget his face. Ash smeared across his skin, eyes wide with more than terror, with surrender. He dropped to his knees right in front of me, hands trembling, palms up, begging like he thought I was sent by God himself. "Please," he cried, voice cracking, "save my kids. Just the kids. I don't care about us. Just get them out. I can't go back in." His legs gave out. He collapsed, still reaching for me, still pleading. I stood there. I felt the heat, the smoke. I heard the children calling, "We're here! Help us! Please don't go!" And I turned around, not quickly, not in panic, just turned and walked. My pace wasn't rushed. I didn't look back. I told myself 100 things. It was too dangerous. The fire department would arrive soon. I'm not trained for this. It wasn't my fault. The further I walked, the quieter it got. The air cooled. The screams faded. By the time I reached the next block, all I heard was my own footsteps. Even the buzz of the street lamps had died. I got home, washed my face, brushed my teeth. I watched TV for an hour. I didn't even think about it. Not really. And yet, I slept like someone who had just buried a secret. Not afraid, not guilty, just silent. The next morning I made coffee, turned on the news. They showed the house, or what was left of it. 3 children perish in North Haven blaze, the anchor read, expression somber. Parents hospitalized. Father in critical condition. No cause of fire determined. They didn't mention me. Why would they? I wasn't the arsonist. I didn't light the match. I didn't chain the door. I only walked away. You may be expecting regret, but I didn't feel any. Not then. Maybe that's what makes this worse. It wasn't guilt that haunted me first. It was something quieter, colder. Indifference. I went on with my day, worked, ate, answered emails. My life was untouched. But there's something I didn't notice that morning. On my sleeve, my favorite jacket, was a small black smear. Now, I must have brushed against something. It didn't matter, but it stayed. No matter how many times I washed that jacket, the stain never came out, and I kept wearing it because I didn't care, because I thought I'd never be caught. Looking back now, I don't know what disturbs me more, that I didn't help, or that I didn't feel anything about it. No panic, no sickness in my stomach, just a vague thought. Glad I wasn't inside. The mind can protect itself with distance. Mine did it with silence. But silence has a price, and the night I walked away from 41 Ember Street was the last night I lived in peace. The morning after the fire, I woke up feeling nothing. Not relief, not horror. Just the dull flatness of waking in a body you know, but don't quite inhabit anymore. I brushed my teeth. The mirror didn't fog this time. I made coffee, black, just how I liked it. I checked my phone, scrolled past the usual clutter. News, weather, some local gossip, and then I saw it. Tragedy in North Haven. 3 children dead in house fire. There it was, the house, or what was left of it. A twisted skeleton of beams and ash and memory. A picture of the family appeared beneath the headline. The father's face was bruised, wrapped in bandages. The mother's eyes were swollen, red, hollow. And the children, Eli, Morgan, and June, were smiling. Frozen forever in a photo taken long before flames erased their voices from this world. I remember staring at that image for a full minute, not because I was shocked, not because I cried, but because I wanted to feel something, and I didn't. I turned off the phone, opened my laptop, started replying to emails. That day I had 3 Zoom calls, 1 proposal deadline, and an overdue grocery list to take care of. I focused on those things. I buried myself in them because they were easier. I told myself, it wasn't your fire. You didn't start it. You weren't responsible. There were people trained for that. Firemen, paramedics, heroes. I wasn't one of them. I was a normal man, just a face in the dark, just someone passing by. Isn't that what most of us are? Around lunchtime, I went to my favorite sandwich shop. The cashier asked how my day was going. I said, fine. I chewed my food. I thought about smoke, not the thick choking kind, but the silent smoke. The one that lingers on your clothes long after you've walked away from the fire. I didn't notice until later, but the smell had followed me. It clung to my shirt, to my jacket, and though I didn't see it then, to something much deeper. That evening I called an old friend. We talked about movies, nothing special. She laughed at something I said. It sounded distant, like she was on the other side of a tunnel. I smiled, or I think I did. There was no mention of the fire, no mention of the children, not from her, not from me. The world kept spinning. The streets were still full of life. The nightclubs were open. People were getting married, cheating, dying, being born, buying milk. The world didn't stop for 3 kids on Ember Street. So why should I? It's funny how long you can live with yourself before something starts to crack. But that night, nothing cracked. I slept. I slept like a man with no past. Like a man whose shoes hadn't stood in front of a burning home. Like a man who'd never heard the sound of children begging him to live. I slept the sleep of the indifferent. You see, the scariest people aren't the ones who do evil. It's the ones who look at evil and feel nothing. I was one of them. A man not wicked, not cruel, just empty. And in that emptiness, monsters crawl in unnoticed. They don't roar, they whisper, they wait. When I look back now, I realize the curse didn't begin when the first shadow appeared. It didn't begin with the haunted mirror, or the burned fingerprints, or the dreams. It began here, in this moment, in this silence, because that's how it always begins. Not with fire, but with forgetting. The first time I heard the knocking, it was sometime after midnight. 3 soft taps, a pause, then 3 more, delicate, hesitant, as though a small hand on the other side of the wall was unsure if it even deserved to be heard. I sat up in bed, blinking into the dark. The room was quiet, save for the faint red blink of the cable box. I checked my phone, 12:03 a.m. I waited, breath shallow, ears straining, but nothing came. I told myself it was nothing. Perhaps a pipe expanding, or the wind nudging loose wood. Old buildings made sounds, didn't they? That's what people always said. I let it go, but I didn't forget. The next night it came again. Same time, same pattern. 3 gentle knocks, then silence. Except this time, there was something else. A faint muffled sobbing. So soft, so buried under the hush of night, I almost convinced myself it was my imagination. Almost. But I live on the 3rd floor. And the sound, it was coming from just outside my bedroom window. I didn't open the blinds. I didn't want to see what might be standing on the other side. Instead, I lay there, rigid beneath the sheets, trying to outbreathe the terror building in my chest. I told myself stories, lies really, that it was the neighbor's television, or a sound carried up from the street, or a dream tangled in the folds of wakefulness. But as I lay there, forcing myself not to move, not to look, a memory stirred, a memory I had forgotten I ever owned. It was of me, as a child, hiding in a closet during a storm, too afraid to speak, but desperate for someone, anyone, to find me. I had knocked, so softly, too softly, because part of me was afraid they wouldn't come, and the other part feared what it would mean if they didn't, and no one ever did. That night I dreamt of fire, but not the loud, roaring kind you see in movies. No, this fire was quiet, terribly quiet, moving through rooms like it knew its way around, like it belonged there. It licked the wallpaper with oily tongues, turned toys into blackened shapes, and drew long shadows across the floor. In the center of the blaze stood children, 3 of them, silent, mouths open wide, eyes fixed on me, but I couldn't hear them. I could only see their pain. I woke with a start, drenched in sweat. My pillow reeked faintly of smoke. My hands were trembling, though the room was still and cold. The following day at work, everything felt off. Voices around me felt detached, as if I were underwater. The overhead lights buzzed louder than usual, and at one point, during a meeting, I stared at a spot on the table for what must have been 10 minutes, utterly convinced it was smoldering. A colleague asked me if I was all right. I smiled, told him I was just tired. He nodded, didn't press. That evening when I got home, I found the front door to my apartment slightly open. That's never happened before. Nothing was missing. Nothing appeared disturbed. But sitting there, neatly placed at the center of my kitchen table, right next to my unopened mail, was a crayon. Red, broken in half. Its tip melted slightly at the end, as if it had been left near something hot. I stood motionless, staring at it. I don't own crayons. I don't have kids, no nieces, no nephews, no neighbors with a key. Just me. Just that crayon. I didn't touch it. Couldn't. Something about it felt sacred, like it was a message left by hands that no longer lived. I didn't throw it out. I didn't move it. I just sat with it, letting the silence stretch across the room like fog. Later that night, in the darkness of my living room, I heard the voice, not in my head, not in a dream, out loud, right beside my ear, a child's whisper, cracked, barely breathing. You left us. I froze, felt my blood go still in my veins. My heart forgot how to beat for a moment. I didn't scream, didn't run. I just sat there, teeth clenched, hoping, begging it was over. But when I opened my eyes, no one was there, except the crayon, still on the table, now standing upright. I didn't sleep at all. I watched the walls. I watched the shadows crawl and shift and curl like smoke. And around 3:00 a.m., I reached for my phone, maybe to call someone, anyone. But something was wrong. My contacts, they were gone. Not all of them, just the ones that mattered. My mother, my oldest friend, my doctor, in their place. 3 names: Eli, Morgan, June. I didn't add them. I didn't even know how to remove them. Trembling, I tapped on the first name, just to see. No ringing, no dial tone. It connected instantly. And on the other end, breathing, shallow, quick, scared, and then a voice, soft, cared, barely more than a breath. Don't walk away again. That's when it changed. That's when I understood. This wasn't about ghosts, or hauntings, or vengeance. This was memory, alive, insistent, knocking. Not to punish me, not yet, but to make sure I remembered, to make sure I never forgot. At first, I thought it was my imagination. A whiff of something faint, charred, bitter, lingering just beneath the scent of clean sheets and laundry detergent. I ignored it, sprayed air freshener, opened a window, blamed it on the neighbors. But the next night it came again, and this time it was stronger, thicker, heavier, like someone had burned toast in a sealed room and left it to rot for days. But there was no toast, there was no fire, only that scent of something. Lost. I washed the bedding, scrubbed every surface, emptied the trash. Still it returned, always around 3:00 a.m., always in the same place, my bedroom. It would start as a whisper in the air, then grow slowly, like a memory you didn't want to relive but couldn't push away. I started to notice it on my clothes, my hands, even my hair. I'd stand in the shower until the water ran cold, scrubbing myself raw, convinced that the smell was in my skin. But it wasn't, not exactly. It wasn't something that could be washed off, because it wasn't on me. It was inside me. One night as I lay in bed trying to ignore it, trying to will myself into sleep despite the nausea in my gut, I heard something shift, a soft creak, then another. I turned my head slowly toward the corner of the room where the closet stood slightly ajar. It had been closed before, I was sure of it. I stared at the gap, heart hammering. There was no wind, no open windows, and yet the door moved, not wide, just enough for the darkness inside to peer out. I didn't get up, didn't investigate. I just watched as ever so faintly, a thin tendril of smoke slipped through the crack, curling upward, impossibly slow, as if it were testing the air, tasting my fear. The next morning, my sheets smelled like soot. There were flecks of black ash on my pillow. My fingers were stained with something gray. I called maintenance. They checked the walls, the vents, the heating unit. They said everything was fine. No fires, no leaks, no problems. I nodded, smiled, thanked them, and the whole time I could still smell it, curling inside my nose like an accusation. They didn't notice. They never do. Later that week, I found something strange. Under my bed, wedged deep between the wall and the mattress, was a burned shoelace, half melted, singed at both ends. It didn't belong to any of my shoes. It was too small, child-sized. I held it in my hand, staring at the way the fabric had curled from the heat. I felt nothing at first, just confusion. Then slowly, like smoke rising from some buried chamber in my mind, a memory, a flash of something, someone, a child sitting on the floor trying to tie their shoes, little fingers fumbling. A mother's voice laughing gently. Bunny ears, Eli, remember? Make the ears. Eli, the name, the voice, the fire. I dropped the shoelace like it had burned me. It hadn't, but my hand still throbbed. And the air in the room shifted, like the house was holding its breath, waiting to see what I would do next. I didn't do anything. I just sat there, shoelace on the floor between my feet, and stared at it until the sun dipped below the horizon and the light turned red. That night, the smell was unbearable. It wasn't just the bedroom anymore. It followed me into the kitchen, into the hallway, into the bathroom. It was in every breath, every sip of water, every inch of fabric I wore. Even my own skin began to feel wrong, like it didn't belong to me anymore. Around 3:12 a.m., I woke suddenly. I don't remember falling asleep, but my eyes snapped open to the sound of something crackling. Not loud, more like the soft hiss of paper curling in flame. I sat up slowly, heart racing. The room was filled with shadows, but something was different. There was light, not from the moon, not from a lamp, but from the closet. A low, flickering orange glow seeping through the bottom of the door. I couldn't move. My legs refused. My throat closed. I just stared. And then, a voice, high, thin, a whisper at the edge of sound. It hurts. I remember curling into myself, whispering into the blanket like a child. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. But even then, I don't think I meant it. Not fully, not yet. It wasn't guilt. It was fear. Primal, acidic, paralyzing fear. I wasn't afraid of the fire. I was afraid of what the fire remembered. Afraid that the flames had eyes, that they saw me that night, saw me walk away, and now they wanted me to see what I'd left behind. The next morning, the glow was gone. The smell was still there, stronger than ever. And on the closet door, drawn in black soot, were 3 small handprints, too high for any child to reach from inside, but just the right height, if they had been reaching for me. People like to say they don't believe in curses, that the world is rational, logical, that science can explain anything if you look long enough, dig deep enough, test carefully enough. I used to be one of those people, but that was before the walls began to whisper, before I learned that some things aren't meant to be explained, only endured. The morning after the handprints appeared, I sat on the edge of my bed for what felt like hours. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I didn't even blink much. I just sat there, breathing in the scent of something burned long ago, feeling a heaviness in the air, as if the atmosphere itself had thickened around me. There was no ash on my sheets this time, no flames, no child's voice in the dark, and yet something had changed. Something had shifted. It wasn't just in my apartment anymore. It was in me. That day, I didn't go to work. I didn't call in sick, didn't send a message. I simply didn't go. And no one called to ask why. Almost like they already knew, I spent the whole day sitting in my kitchen, staring at the burned shoelace I had placed in a glass bowl on the table. like it was evidence, like I was building a case against myself. But what would the charge be? Negligence? Cowardice? Abandonment? None of those sounded strong enough. And so I said it out loud. For the first time, I left them. Just 3 words. But the sound of them filled the entire apartment like thunder, as if the walls themselves had been waiting to hear the truth spoken. And when I did, the light above me flickered. Once, then again. A whisper of wind brushed against my face, though the windows were closed. That evening, I noticed something carved into the wood of my bedroom door. It hadn't been there before, I was sure of it. 3 words, etched deep, like by a nail or knife. You saw us. I touched the grooves with my fingers. The cuts were still fresh, rough, splintering, alive. And I realized something then. This wasn't a haunting. This was a reckoning. I wasn't just being visited. I was being held accountable. By them. By whatever remained of Eli, Morgan, and June. Later that night, I had another dream. I was back on Ember Street. The house was whole again. No fire, no smoke, just stillness. The front yard was tidy, the flowers in bloom, and the porch light glowed with warmth. I walked up to the front door, knocked once, twice, 3 times, and a small voice answered, "Coming?" The door creaked open, and there they were. The 3 children, smiling, unburned. But behind them, in the hallway, a second version of me, eyes hollow, face blank, standing completely still. And when I looked closer, I realized he was on fire, but he didn't scream, didn't move, didn't even blink. He just burned, quietly, endlessly. I woke up gasping. That same night, I tried to write about it, just to get it out of my head. But every time I opened a document, the words rearranged themselves on the screen. No matter what I typed, it always twisted into the same sentence. You still have time. It didn't say to fix it or to apologize. Just that time. Time for what? To be punished? To confess? To finally face what I'd become? I started keeping the lights on at night, not because I was scared of the dark, but because I was scared of what might try to come through it. I taped the closet shut. I double-locked the windows. I unplugged every mirror in the apartment, but none of it helped. The smell stayed, the whispers deepened, and the weight of their absence pressed heavier on my chest each day. One afternoon, I opened the fridge and found something that wasn't food. A photograph, black and white, curled at the edges, burned in one corner. It showed a birthday party. Eli's, I think. There was cake, balloons, a train set on the table, and right at the edge of the frame, me, standing at the window, watching. Except I wasn't supposed to be there. I never knew them. Never stepped inside that house. Never met them. And yet, there I was, in their photo, frozen in time, face blank, hands in my pockets, watching. I dropped the picture. It curled up on the floor like something trying to die. I couldn't breathe. Not because of fear, this time, but because something deeper had cracked inside me. Something that could no longer pretend it wasn't responsible. There is a kind of curse that doesn't scream or chase or bleed. It doesn't throw furniture or slam doors. No, it simply waits, patient, silent, like a child on the other side of a window, hoping, just hoping you'll look back. And if you don't, it follows. It follows you into your dreams, into your walls, into your reflection, until eventually, it becomes you. I stopped opening the blinds. It wasn't about the light anymore. It was about what I kept seeing in the reflection. The almost things, shapes that vanished the moment I turned, shadows that didn't belong to any furniture. A flicker of movement where there should have been stillness. And sometimes, just sometimes, a hand, small, pale, pressing gently against the glass from the outside, always at the same height, always 5 fingers spread wide, always gone when I blinked. I tried to rationalize it, told myself it was trick of the light, or a leftover imprint from my own hand. But mine weren't that small, and mine never left soot. Because when I finally found the courage to lift the curtain fully one morning, there it was. A single child-sized handprint pressed against the outer pane of my bedroom window. Dark, smudged, and unmistakably real. I stared at it for a long time. Didn't clean it, didn't touch it, just let it stay there. Like a mark, like a question left unanswered. That same day, I received mail I hadn't expected. There was no return address, just a plain envelope, slightly singed at the corner. Inside, folded carefully, was a drawing, crayon on yellowed paper, rough lines, uneven strokes, 3 stick figures holding hands beneath a lopsided sun. The names written above them in shaky letters: Eli, Morgan, June, and in the corner, a 4th figure, taller, standing apart from the others, with black scribbles for eyes, and red crayon marks drawn all around its body. Not like fire, but like it was already burned. I didn't recognize the handwriting, but I didn't need to, because on the back, there were words, in small, faint script, a question. Why didn't you help us? I tore the drawing in half, then into 4ths, then 8ths. I flushed the pieces down the toilet, watched them swirl and vanish, felt nothing, or told myself I did. But that night they came again, not in dreams, not in memory, but in the walls. It began with the thudding, rhythmic, heavy, footsteps, running, back and forth, just above me, except I live on the top floor. I stood under the ceiling, breath held, heart ticking like a second-hand clock on the edge of shattering. The footsteps continued, then stopped, and for a while silence. Until, tap at the window again. I didn't move, didn't look. But I knew, it was back. The hand, the watcher, the one who no longer asked to be let in, but waited for me to come out. Somewhere around 3:15 a.m., I broke. I threw open the curtain, nothing. Just a pale moon rolling past the glass in a city far too asleep to care. But then, a breath on the window, not mine. The glass fogged slightly and slowly, so slowly I could have imagined it. Words appeared, still watching you. I dropped to the floor, back against the wall, eyes wide, mouth dry. I wanted to run, to leave the apartment, to scream. But where do you run when the thing chasing you isn't outside? When it's something you let die? By standing still? Later that week, I found another shoelace. This one pink, knotted, singed, tucked neatly into my medicine cabinet, right next to my razor. I hadn't opened that cabinet in days, hadn't shaved, hadn't wanted to see my own face. But now, there it was, the mirror, waiting. I tried to cover it with a towel. It fell off 3 times that night. Eventually, I stopped trying and stood there, looking at myself, except it wasn't just me. In the corner, blurred, nearly invisible, was a child's face watching from behind my reflection. Not angry, not crying, just disappointed. And somehow that was worse. There's a kind of grief that doesn't belong to you. Grief you borrowed, stole, inherited through silence. That's what this was. Not my loss, but my fault. And the house on Ember Street, the screaming, the fire, the pleading father, they had begun to replay in my head like film on a loop. But now, each time, the children were looking directly at me. I still hadn't cried. I wanted to. Tried. Stared at old photographs of strangers. Tried to conjure tears. But all I could feel was the weight. A pressure building beneath my ribs. A scream that hadn't found its voice yet. Until one night, I woke up to my own hands pressed against the window glass. Face leaning into the cold pane. Breath fogging the surface. I didn't remember standing. Didn't remember walking there. But I was there. Just like they had been. Just like I had seen. And for the first time, I understood. They weren't waiting for revenge. They were waiting for recognition, for acknowledgement, for me to stop pretending I hadn't seen them, hadn't heard them, hadn't known. Because I had. I had seen the fire, heard the screams, watched the father kneel, felt the heat, and I had walked away. Now they were returning the favor, not violently, not cruelly, but persistently, like a hand on the window, waiting, quiet, and impossibly patient. It started with a strange itch, not painful, not even irritating, just persistent, a tingling just beneath the surface of my skin, like something wriggling quietly, trying to rise. At first I ignored it. I told myself it was dry air, poor circulation, stress. God knows I had enough of that. But then came the redness, the slight discoloration near my collarbone, a pink oval the size of a child's palm. At first, I thought it was a rash, then maybe an insect bite, until it grew darker, until it began to blister. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, shirt pulled down, inspecting the wound with quiet dread. It didn't hurt, not really, but it looked like it should have. A perfect outline, fingers spread slightly, skin raised and raw at the edges. Like someone, something, had pressed their hand to my flesh while I was sleeping. Not with cruelty, but with ownership, like branding. I scrubbed at it, hard, furiously, but it didn't fade. If anything, the skin around it turned angrier, redder, pulsing faintly beneath my touch like it had its own heartbeat. I wrapped it in gauze, wore long sleeves, tried to forget, but forgetting was no longer an option. That night, I dreamed I was on fire. Not metaphorically, not symbolically. I was burning, skin curling, eyes boiling, mouth open in a scream I couldn't hear. But it wasn't the pain that woke me, it was the laughter. High-pitched, delighted, like children playing a game they'd been waiting ages to begin. And when I opened my eyes, soaked in sweat, the room smelled scorched. Not the lingering, subtle smoke of the past weeks, but fresh, sharp, real. I sat up, pulled the sheets back. There on the mattress beneath me, a perfect black handprint. Same size, same shape, right where my wound had been pressed. I didn't go to the hospital. What would I say? "Excuse me, doctor, I'm being touched by ghosts." No, I kept it to myself, like I had kept everything else, but the body doesn't lie. And my body was beginning to betray me. Over the next few days, more marks appeared. Small ones scattered along my arms and chest. Some were mere impressions, like the shape of knuckles resting gently. Others were harsher, burnt fingerprints, as if tiny hands were trying to hold on to me while slipping away. I tried to document them, photographed them under different light, compared the spacing, measured. Each set of prints belonged to a different hand. 3 in total: Eli, Morgan, June. I knew it without knowing how. The way you know a scar belongs to a memory you can't fully recall, but feel in your bones every time you breathe. I stopped wearing short sleeves, stopped going outside during the day, pulled down my blinds and unplugged the clocks, because time had become irrelevant. Night and day no longer mattered. The fire burned whether the sun was up or not. Sometimes I'd catch a glimpse of Moxillian Astigam. Ching, a spoon, a window, the microwave door, and I'd see the marks glowing faintly beneath my clothes, like embers, waiting. One morning I found a single bandage in my bathroom, already unwrapped, laid neatly on the counter. On it was a child's drawing, done in blue ink. 3 small stick figures, one tall figure with red eyes, and beside it, 3 words: "We see you." I stopped sleeping. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I felt the pressure of those hands returning. Not painful, not violent, just persistent, as though they were trying to reach something inside me, something I'd buried. At 3:33 a.m., I watched the mark on my shoulder begin to pulse, softly, like a heartbeat. It glowed, briefly. I felt warmth, not from inside, but from the air around me. A presence, thick, like breath on the back of my neck. I turned. Nothing. But the light bulb in the hallway exploded seconds later. A soft pop, then darkness. I've stopped telling myself this isn't real. because denial has no power anymore. What's happening isn't a story. It isn't grief. It isn't guilt. It's justice. Justice shaped like small hands etched into my skin, staining my memories, dragging me backward. I started whispering their names out loud. At first it was accidental, a reflex in the quiet, but now it's intentional, a kind of prayer or apology. Eli, Morgan, June. I say them every night. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want them to know I haven't forgotten, because now I can't. Their fingerprints are written across my body. Their pain is pressed into my bones. And every day, a little more of me becomes part of the story I tried to walk away from. I used to think memory was just a photograph, something still, flat, passive, an image you could choose to look at or not. But I was wrong. Memory is a room, a living, breathing room, one that you can walk into and one that can lock the door behind you. It began with the layout. I started seeing it clearer each night. The shape of the hallway, the peeling wallpaper, the toy box pushed up against the wall, the exact pattern of the rug beneath my feet. A house I had never entered, but now knew better than my own. Every detail came back in pieces, stitched together from fragments I didn't remember noticing the night of the fire. The smell of old wood, the chipped ceramic owl on the windowsill, the way the door creaked not from its hinges, but from something warped deep in the frame. It wasn't imagination, it was recall, and that terrified me, because you can't recall what you didn't live. And I had told myself for weeks, months even, that I had only seen the fire, not stepped into it. But my dreams told a different story. In them, I wasn't outside. I was inside, walking through that house, room to room, and each one burning. I tried to stay awake, tried caffeine, cold showers, pills, but eventually sleep came. It always does. And so did the room. It began in the hallway. The wallpaper was darkened, blistering at the corners. Family portraits on the wall, some half melted, others cracked from heat. And then, the sounds. Not screams, not anymore. Laughter, children's laughter, soft, innocent, dancing through the smoke like it didn't belong there. Then I'd turn the corner and see the door, always closed, always pulsing with orange light beneath it, and behind it, the room, their room. The first time I opened it, I hesitated. My hands shook. The knob was warm, too warm. But something in me, maybe curiosity, maybe guilt, turned it anyway. The fire wasn't wild inside. It was calm, contained, as if it had learned to live there. The bed was aflame, the shelves flickered. A dollhouse melted slowly into itself in the corner. And in the center of it all, 3 small figures, not screaming, not crying, just watching. They didn't move, didn't speak, but their eyes, God, their eyes. They weren't angry, they weren't even sad, they were waiting. Like I was late. In one dream I walked closer, closer than I'd ever dared. And I saw the pictures on the wall, crayon drawings, the kind children tape up with pride. Except this time the drawings were of me. Over and over, the same figure, standing outside a burning house, hands in pockets, face turned away. The caption beneath one, "He saw us." I woke up screaming, not shouting, not yelling, screaming, like a man being pulled back into a place he was never meant to escape. My throat burned, my skin reeked of soot. The bedsheets were damp, not with sweat, but with ash. I called a therapist the next day. Finally, told them I was experiencing recurring nightmares, that I was struggling with guilt, that I thought I had seen something or done something, that my mind wouldn't let me forget. They asked me questions, gentle ones, but none of them mattered, because by then it was no longer about the past. It was about the room. I started seeing it while I was awake, not always fully, sometimes just a corner, a shadow that looked like bunk beds, the glint of a fire truck toy on the floor, a reflection in the toaster that didn't belong. Once, I swore I smelled melting plastic in the elevator at work. No one else noticed. They never do. One night I came home and found a note taped to my front door. Child's handwriting. Black marker. It read, "You're almost there." No explanation, no name, just those 3 words, as if this was a destination I had chosen. Inside, the apartment was unchanged, except for one thing. The floor beneath my bedroom window, burned, a perfect square, charred black, as though someone had lit a fire in that exact spot and then erased everything else. I touched it. It was cold, but the air above it was warm. I stood there for a long time, trying to decide whether to panic or surrender, because maybe this wasn't about haunting anymore. Maybe this was a bridge. Maybe every time I dreamed that room, I wasn't being punished. I was being invited. But why? To feel what they felt? To relive it? To carry it? Or was this something else, something deeper? Maybe the fire wasn't just in the house. Maybe it had been in me all along, dormant, waiting. And maybe they lit the match not to destroy me, but to reveal me, to show me who I really was when it mattered most, and what I had chosen to do. Walk away. I forgot my sister's name this morning. It didn't vanish all at once. It just slipped away mid-sentence like a feather on a breeze. One moment I had it, the next it was gone. I stood in the kitchen, staring blankly at a postcard she had sent me years ago. It was from New Orleans. There was a cartoon alligator on the front, wearing sunglasses and playing the trumpet. On the back, in blue ink, she'd written, "Love you always, D, don't disappear from us." And I stared at that signature, her looping M, the way she always drew a little heart beneath her name. And I couldn't say it, couldn't remember it. Just a gaping silence where her identity had once lived. I tried everything. Looked through old texts, emails, voicemails. They were there, all of them. Proof that she had existed, that we had laughed, shared blood, shared childhood. But her name, gone. I said it out loud once, just to test if I still could. What came out of my mouth wasn't hers. Later that same day, I couldn't remember my high school graduation, or my favorite color, or the last book I read. But I remembered Eli's laugh, the way it bounced down the hallway like a skipping rock on still water. I remembered Morgan's drawings, scribbly superheroes with uneven capes and no noses. And June's voice, soft, sweet, forever asking for just one more bedtime story. I remembered things I was never told, things I couldn't have known, their birthdays, their bedtime routines, their favorite cereals. My head felt split, one half unraveling, the other filling with details that did not belong to me. I went to a neurologist, told her I was having memory problems, that I thought I might be losing pieces of myself. She ran tests, scans, blood work. Everything came back clean. No trauma, no tumors, no signs of degeneration. She smiled politely and said, "Stress does strange things." I nodded, lied, said I understood. But the truth is, this isn't stress. It's substitution. Someone, something is replacing me. That night, I found an old yearbook, flipped through the pages looking for my own face. I wasn't there. Not a single photo, not in the senior class, not in the club photos, not in the index. It was as if I had never been part of it at all. But tucked into the back cover, written in faded pencil, was a message. We're not erasing you, we're absorbing you. You're becoming part of us. And beneath that, 3 names written in childish looping script: Eli, Morgan, June. I screamed, not out of fear, but out of helplessness. Because for the first time I realized I wasn't just being haunted, I was being rewritten. I tried to fight it, printed old photos, made lists of people I loved, tattooed initials onto my wrist, but the ink blurred, the names faded, and the faces in the pictures began to distort. In one photo, me and my father fishing when I was 9, my father's face was gone, wiped smooth, blank. In its place, a small handprint, pressed into the photograph like it had burned straight through. I tried to call my father, The number no longer existed. His contact name had changed to the man who didn't kneel. I didn't understand, but I remembered. The man on Ember Street, the one who begged me to save his children. And I realized he wasn't their father. I was. I don't know when the line blurred, when memory stopped being truth and truth became punishment. But I know this. The more I forget of myself, the more I remember them. And the more I remember them, the more they live. I think that's the curse. Not death, not damnation, not fire, but replacement. To become the vessel for what I refuse to carry, to hold their screams, their last moments, their loneliness. Until my name no longer matters, until I no longer exist, only they do. I look in the mirror now, and the face is still mine, but the eyes are changing. There's a softness there, a sadness, the same kind I saw in June's reflection the night she reached for the window. She's behind the eyes now. So are the others, waiting, breathing, whispering. Not much longer. I don't know how many memories I have left, but the ones that remain aren't mine. It wasn't logic that drove me. It wasn't guilt either. By then, guilt had already rotted into something deeper, something heavier, something that didn't ask or apology, only obedience. It felt like instinct, like I was following a trail that had always been there, waiting beneath the surface of my mind. I didn't plan it. I didn't even think I could plan anymore. But I opened my laptop, typed Ember Street Fire, North Haven, Children, and the screen flickered once, then loaded. There were articles, local news first, obituaries, one scathing opinion piece titled, "How many more will we watch burn?" I clicked it. The photo at the top was grainy, probably taken from a cell phone during the blaze, but in the reflection of the window, I saw myself. Not clearly, not unmistakably, but enough, a tall figure, hands at sides, staring, just standing there. Even the caption beneath seemed to speak directly to me. An unidentified witness was seen at the scene. He left before first responders arrived. I stopped breathing, not because I was exposed, but because the word witness no longer felt accurate. I wasn't a witness, I was a variable, a hinge, a turning point, and I had turned away. Next, I searched death certificates, fire reports, police statements. I had no credentials, no special access, but the files weren't locked. They didn't resist, as if someone wanted me to find them. I found a document from the county fire marshal, an official summary, origin unknown, accelerant not found, suspected cause, electrical, but no definitive evidence. There was a line near the end, almost as an afterthought. Eyewitnesses recall hearing the voices of children calling for help from inside the second floor window. That window, the one I had walked past, the one I didn't touch, didn't tap on, didn't open. I remembered the voice of the father, his knees scraping pavement, his hands trembling, his words slurring together in desperation. Please just get them out. I remembered the look in his eyes, not hope, not even anger, but acceptance, like he knew exactly who I was the moment I didn't move. I started printing things, photos, statements, the obituary with their names, Eli, Morgan, June. I stuck them to the wall of my apartment. It felt stupid, felt cliche, but I needed to see it all at once, to make it real, to organize the mess in my head. But as I stood back and looked, it already was organized. Each paper formed a shape, not quite a circle, not a triangle, but something older. A symbol I didn't recognize, but felt like I'd seen before, somewhere deep, maybe in dreams, maybe in fire. I picked up a pen and started drawing lines between photos, red ink, just like in movies. Except I wasn't connecting evidence. I was mapping memory. Mine, theirs, I no longer knew. Then something new. I found a transcript, buried deep in an archive forum. It was from a 911 call. Timestamp, 10:41 p.m. Caller, unknown male voice. Address, 41 Ember Street. The voice was static-filled but urgent, rushed, panicked, yes, but detached, like he didn't fully believe what he was reporting. I think there's a fire. There's kids. I don't know. I can hear them. Please send someone. Just send someone." Then a pause. "No, I can't go in. Call dropped. I played it 3 times. Each time my skin tightened because the voice was mine. Different somehow, shaken, higher pitched, but undeniably me. I had called, then walked away. As if that was enough, as if a single call could cancel out inaction. I printed that too, pinned it in the center, and for the first time, I saw the shape clearly. It wasn't a symbol, it was a doorway, and I was standing on the wrong side of it. That night I dreamt I was back at the house, but this time I was inside. Not during the fire, but before it. Eli was coloring on the floor. Morgan was building towers out of blocks. June was brushing the hair of a melted doll. Everything was normal, until they turned to look at me. Not frightened, not angry, just aware, like they had known I would come. And in unison they asked, "What took you so long?" I woke up crying, the first real tears since it began. Not out of fear, not from pain, but because I understood. This wasn't about punishment, it was about recognition. They didn't want me to suffer. They wanted me to see, to trace every step, every moment, to walk backward through the smoke and find the exact second I made the choice. Not to run, not to burn, but to walk away. And now they were showing me the cost. One memory at a time. I didn't drive there. I don't remember packing a bag. Didn't check the weather, didn't set an alarm. I just ended up there, standing on the corner of a street that shouldn't have existed anymore. Ember Street. The sign was still there, bent, rusted, clinging to the pole like it knew no one would ever look for it again. The air smelled like rain, but beneath it, smoke, faint, old, like a ghost breath brushing the edge of memory. And in front of me, where a house had once stood, was a house still standing. This was impossible. I knew that. The fire had gutted it. I had read the reports, seen the pictures, watched it collapse in the news footage. But now it was here, whole, complete, unburned. No caution tape, no char, no signs of trauma, just quiet, like it had been waiting for me. I stepped onto the front lawn. The grass bent under my feet, wet, real. The breeze carried the faint hum of a wind chime somewhere nearby. It all felt so normal, and yet wrong, like stepping into a dream halfway through when you're not sure who you are or why you're there. But every inch of your body tells you not to turn back. I reached the porch. The floorboards creaked, familiar and low. The door was slightly ajar. It hadn't been left open. It had been opened for me. I didn't knock, didn't call out. I crossed the threshold like someone returning to a place they never wanted to leave in the first place. Inside, everything was still, too still, like a play set waiting for actors. Photographs on the wall, shoes by the mat, crayon drawings stuck to the fridge with letter magnets, and in the air, the hum, a low, pulsing hum, like a held breath, like the house itself was bracing for something. I moved slowly through the hallway. To my left, the kitchen. To my right, the living room. And ahead, the staircase. I paused. Something about it made my skin tighten, because I knew. Even before I climbed a single step, I knew what waited upstairs. The room, their room. I reached the top. Each step felt heavier than the last, like the weight of the past was no longer metaphorical. It was real, dragging at my spine, clawing at my lungs. The hallway up there was narrower than I remembered. Or maybe it had always been this tight, suffocating even. There were 3 doors, one to the left, one to the right, and one at the very end, closed, but flickering with light beneath it. That one. I walked toward it, each step echoing with the sound of distant laughter. and distant screams. They blurred together now, like memory didn't want me to know which had come first, joy or death. When I reached the door, I placed my hand on the knob. It was warm. Not burn you warm, but alive warm, like a heartbeat pulsing in brass. I turned it and opened the door. The room was exactly as I had seen it in dreams, not how it had looked before the fire, but how it had looked during. Frozen in that moment of catastrophe, walls blackened, toys melted, sheets curled at the edges like old photographs left too close to a flame. And in the center, 3 beds, 3 figures, still, silent, watching me. They didn't speak, they didn't move, but something in the air shifted, thickened, pressed inward. And then, a voice, not theirs, mine, behind me. I turned and saw myself, not how I look now, how I had looked then, that night, standing in the doorway, dry, clean, calm, watching the children, hands in pockets, unmoving. The me from that night didn't acknowledge me. He just stood there, as he always had, not helping, not screaming, not running, just watching. And I realized that version of me never left this house. I had walked away, but part of me had stayed, locked in this room, burning, over and over. I turned back to the children. Eli stood now. Morgan climbed down from his bed. June hugged her melted doll to her chest. And together, they walked toward me. Not menacing, not angry, just tired. So tired. When they reached me, they didn't speak. They simply raised their hands and touched me. Warm, not hot, not painful, just warm. Like sunlight through old curtains. Like the palm of someone who once trusted you and still might. And the burning in my chest, the one I had carried since that night, finally cracked. Not extinguished, released. And I wept. Not like a man being punished, but like a man finally remembering what he had forgotten. When I opened my eyes, the room was empty. No fire, no ash, no beds, just 4 drawings on the wall, 3 children, and a man with no face. But this time, he was kneeling. This time I ran, not out of panic, not from fear. I ran because I finally wanted to act, to do something, to rewrite the ending I had once chosen not to interrupt. The house behind me shimmered and vanished, its door still ajar, but no longer mine to stand in. Now I stood somewhere else, somewhere familiar. It looked like a memory, it felt like punishment, but it moved like a dream. Corridors stretched at unnatural angles. Wallpaper blistered and peeled as if trying to shed its own skin. The air was thick with heat, and yet the floor was cold beneath my bare feet. I didn't remember losing my shoes, didn't remember the hallway forming around me, but I kept running. Something told me, deep in my ribs, that I had to reach that room again, but not the one filled with ash, the one filled with screaming. The hallway forked, one side veered into darkness, the other shimmered with a soft orange glow. I turned toward the light, toward the heat, toward the sound, and I heard it. Help! Please! We're here! Not echoes, not memories, voices alive. Now I ran harder. The walls seemed to pulse. Doors slid past me like illusions, painted into the world only to test my focus. I reached the end of the hallway, breathless, shaking, and found the door. It was different this time. Charred around the edges, smoke pouring from beneath it, and yet whole. A perfectly intact wooden door, closed. I grabbed the knob, hot, too hot, but I didn't care. I twisted, locked, I pulled, pushed, slammed my shoulder against it. Nothing. Inside, the screaming grew louder, more frantic. Children pleading, please open it, open it. My fists bled from pounding. My throat burned from yelling. The doorknob trembled, just once, like someone had touched it from the other side. I whispered, let me in. Silence, and then a small voice. You didn't knock before. I stepped back, stunned. That was true. That night on Ember Street, I had never knocked, never approached, never tried. I had heard, I had seen, but I had turned. I looked at the door again. 3 handprints, burned into the wood, just like the ones on my skin. Beneath them, carved in jagged strokes, the words, "Too late then, too early now." I collapsed to my knees, not from pain, from knowing. Knowing that even with all my regret, even with all my shame, some doors do not open for the second chance. Some doors are ceremonial, placed there to remind us that the moment already passed, and we failed. But I stayed. I didn't run. I pressed my forehead against the door, whispered through the smoke, "I'm sorry, I know it doesn't change anything, but I am." For a moment, silence, then a breeze, cool, from beneath the door. The screaming stopped, and in its place, 3 voices, soft, calm, layered together like a lullaby. "We know." I sat there for a long time, letting the air cool, letting my heartbeat slow, and in that stillness, I understood something I hadn't before. This wasn't about rescue, it never was. It was about presence, about staying, about not looking away. The door never opened. I never saw their faces again that night, but something shifted. The hallway no longer pulsed. The smoke faded, and the door, though still closed, no longer felt like a weapon. It felt like a wound, one that would never fully close, but also one that no longer bled. When I stood, my legs trembled, not from weakness, from release. I walked back the way I came. The walls no longer warped, the corridor no longer endless. And as I turned one final corner, I saw it, a mirror, tall, cracked, standing freely in the space. I walked up to it, looked inside, and saw them, all 3, standing behind me, not accusing, not condemning, just there, watching, present. I didn't turn, didn't try to touch them. Some things aren't meant to be reversed. But as I watched, each of them placed their small hands on my shoulders, reflected only in the glass, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Not absolution, not forgiveness, but acceptance. When I blinked, they were gone. The mirror cracked further down the center, splitting my reflection in 2. One half stood still, the other walked away. I left the mirror behind. Some doors never open, and some only open once. There was no summons, no jury duty letter, no bailiff knocking at my door. And yet, I knew where I had to go, and I knew what it was, even before I arrived, even before I stepped into that room. The trial had begun. The building wasn't real, at least not in the way wood and brick are real. It had no walls, no roof, only columns, tall, blackened with soot, reaching into a sky I could not see. Above me, void. Below me, ash. The floor cracked with every step, like I was walking on burnt bone. And at the center of it all, a circle of light, not warm, not inviting, but still truthful. They were already seated, 3 small chairs, 3 small bodies. Eli, Morgan, June, not disfigured, not monstrous, just children, but changed. They wore no expression, only knowing. And in front of them, a 4th chair, for me. I walked forward. Every step felt heavier, not just in the legs, but in the soul. Like I was dragging behind me every moment I had chosen silence. Every second I had turned away. I sat. The air around me buzzed, not with noise, but with judgment. Not from them, but from within. They didn't speak, because they didn't have to. This was never going to be a trial where they accused me. This was going to be a trial where I had to do the one thing I feared most. Tell the truth. I tried to open my mouth. No sound came out. I tried again, and it began. I heard you. I did. I heard you scream. I heard the window break. I heard the glass fall like brittle confetti onto the sidewalk. The children didn't react. They only watched, not blinking, not judging, just witnessing. I saw the flames. I saw your father collapse on the lawn. I saw your mother's silhouette in the upstairs window, clawing at the smoke. Still no response. And I kept walking. Those words tasted like rust. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't want it to start caring. Because once you start, you can't stop. It gets inside you. It tears at your skin. It asks things of you you're not ready to give. Now June tilted her head just slightly, the first movement, the faintest recognition of pain. I wasn't brave. I wasn't evil. I was nothing. And I think maybe that's worse, Ron. I paused. The air in the room, if it could be called a room, tightened. The columns trembled. The ash beneath my feet stirred. I told myself it wasn't my responsibility, that someone else would come, someone trained, someone better. I made a decision based on comfort, not consequence. Now Morgan leaned forward, hands in his lap, eyes filled with weight far older than his years. I didn't knock, I didn't run, I didn't even stop. I just didn't. Silence fell like a gavel, not dramatic, not final, but inevitable. And then Eli finally spoke. His voice was quiet, cracked, the voice of a boy who had screamed too long and now only whispered. "Do you think you deserve forgiveness?" My mouth opened. And for once, I didn't lie. No. Morgan asked a second question. Simple, brutal. "Do you think saying sorry makes it better?" I looked him in the eyes. "My better, just honest." Then June, her voice barely existed, like wind passing through curtains at dusk. "Would you walk away again?" And this time, without hesitation, no. A long pause. I felt the answer settle into the earth, into my chest, into the broken pieces of who I had been. And then the children stood, not as accusers, not as judges, but as the keepers of truth. The court had no verdict, because I had already been living the sentence. Regret, memory, a name carved into ash. But something shifted. I felt it. Not release, but recognition. The kind that doesn't erase pain, but gives it shape, form, purpose. Eli stepped forward first, held out his hand. I took it. It didn't burn, it had glowed. Morgan placed something in my palm, a crayon, melted, still soft. And June leaned in, whispered 3 words, "Now you stay." Then the light faded, the columns crumbled, and I was alone again, but not empty. Inside me, a verdict, not innocent, not condemned, but accountable. I didn't expect peace, not after everything, not after screams etched into my memory, not after dreams soaked in soot, not after years of silence shaped like stone. But there was stillness now, not the absence of noise, but the presence of something deeper, something I hadn't felt in a very long time, a kind of listening. It began with a candle. I don't remember buying it, don't remember placing it on the floor, but there it was, in the center of my apartment, lit, the flame small, steady, breathing. I sat down in front of it, cross-legged, barefoot, empty-handed. I didn't have incense, didn't have prayers memorized, didn't even know who I was talking to anymore. But I knew I had to speak, and that this time, I wouldn't ask for anything. So I bowed my head, closed my eyes, and whispered, "This is not a plea, not a negotiation, not a request for release. This is a confession carved in breath. This is me, staying." The flame flickered, not violently, but acknowledgingly, almost like it was nodding or exhaling back. I kept going. I know I didn't try. I know I saw the fire and chose the distance. I thought that by doing nothing, I would carry nothing. But silence is a form of violence too. And I hear it now, in my bones, in the walls, in the space where your laughter used to echo. I could almost feel them gathering, not physically, not visibly, but something moved in the air, a shift, a presence, a witnessing. I placed both hands on the floor, It was warm, pulsing, alive, as though the entire apartment had become one vast breath, inhaling all I had to say. So I said more. Eli, you always stood at the window, not because you were scared, but because you believed someone would come. Morgan, you never let go of your brother's hand, not once. June, you prayed harder than I ever have, even when the smoke took your voice. My throat tightened. Tears fell, not as punishment, but as proof. Proof that I still had something human left to offer. I looked into the flame. It danced like it understood, and I whispered one last thing. I don't ask you to forgive me, but if you can still hear me, please know that I stayed. This time I stayed. The flame flared, once, then dimmed, then held. And in that flicker, just for a moment, I saw their faces, not burning, not weeping, just watching. Like the first night, like the last night, like every night between. But this time, I didn't look away. Outside the window, the city glowed. Cars passed. Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone laughed too loud downstairs. Life continued. And still, I stayed. Not as punishment, not as penance, but as presence. I lit a second candle, then a third, one for each of them. 3 small flames, side by side, holding each other like tiny souls unbroken by time. I whispered their names again. Eli, Morgan, June. But it wasn't a chant, not anymore. It was a lullaby, soft, true, unforced. A kind of prayer that doesn't ask, but offers. And as I sat in that flickering glow, hands steady, breath full, heart cracked but whole, I knew they heard me. Maybe not with ears, maybe not with minds, but with memory. Because memory is the bridge, the real one, the one I should have built that night. And though it took years, smoke fire whispers dreams, I finally built it. With names, with presence, with pain. The candles stayed lit until dawn. And for the first time in my life, I didn't dream of fire. I still smell the smoke. It's faint now, no longer choking, no longer acidic, but it's there, in the folds of my clothes, in the air that clings to me, in the silence between each breath. A reminder, not of fire, but of presence. People think redemption comes like a sunrise, bright, immediate, full of glory. But sometimes it comes like embers, flickering, barely alive, whispering warmth where there used to be only heat. I didn't walk away from the flames. I simply stopped trying to escape them, and they stopped trying to consume me. My apartment is quieter now, not in a lonely way, in a sacred way. There are still creaks in the floorboards, still distant laughter in the pipes, but I don't flinch anymore because I know who they are, and they know me. I still light 3 candles every night. One for Eli, one for Morgan, one for June. Sometimes I speak, sometimes I don't. They don't need words anymore. They just need space and presence. I've learned that presence is a kind of atonement, to stay when you once walked away, to witness when you once turned your face, to carry when you once let others burn alone. People ask why I stopped going out, why I quit my job, why I moved to the edge of the city where no one visits unless they have a reason. I don't offer explanations. How do you explain to someone that you once stood in front of a burning house and didn't knock? How do you explain that now? You're building houses no one else sees. I've started drawing. Not well, but faithfully. I draw the room, the hallway, the window. I draw the fire, yes, but I also draw the stillness after, the sacred quiet, the moment where everything has turned to ash, but something holy remains. A whisper in the soot, a name in the walls, a child's handprint on your soul. Sometimes I think of who I used to be, not with shame, not even with regret, but with recognition. He was scared, detached, hollow. He thought that avoiding pain made him strong. He thought that staying out of the fire meant staying alive. But now I know better. Sometimes you live longer by burning, by letting the flames show you where the lies are, by letting the heat melt away everything that isn't true. I don't dream of the house anymore, but I do see them every now and then, in reflections, in the spaces between flickers of candlelight, in the way the wind rustles the curtains at 3:12 a.m. They don't cry, they don't scream, they just exist, like me, not waiting for salvation, just here. I don't ask for forgiveness. That ship has sailed, or maybe it burned, and that's okay, because forgiveness is a human invention. But presence is divine. The marks on my skin have faded, not completely. There are still scars, small ones, shaped like hands, placed like memories, but they don't hurt. They remind, and I want to remember, because forgetting is what started this. Forgetting is what let the fire spread. This story doesn't end in rescue. There is no redemption arc, no grand absolution, no second chance miracle. Only a man in a quiet room, lighting candles for the ones he failed, and choosing every day to not fail them again. I walk the city now with different eyes. I listen more to you. When I hear a scream in the distance, I don't turn the volume up. When I see someone kneeling, I kneel with them. When a window glows orange in the dark, I knock, always, because I know what it feels like to be on the other side. And I know what it means when someone chooses to stay. The fire never left me, but it no longer devours. It illuminates, and I walk with it now, not ahead of it, not behind it, with it, side by side, like three small shadows, and one man who finally learned how to listen. Thanks for watching the whole video. Please give me a like and subscribe to the channel to watch more interesting stories.